Right, it is podcast 192B. Or not to be. Well, it's podcast 192. This is the second part of the two-part podcast. Last week, we talked about nutrition and did quite a bit of damage. He's broken 21 bones, shattered his pelvis, fractured his spine, had his spleen removed, damage to his kidney, bad accident. So he's going to be off work for a little bit. So obviously we've had to work a little bit hard in the shop as well. How long is a piece of string? 2 pallets. Gavita, 2 pallets. And Barry's got a bad back, so he opened up the bin bags. It was down to me and Jalal. We had to do all the hard work. So that's it. Let's get into the podcast. Thank you very much for your wishes for Brian. Send your wishes for Barry as well. He's getting on a little bit. The grey hair's caught up with him, and he's in a lot of pain with his back. So send him rubs, hugs, and kisses. Before we go to our intro, we need to give thanks to our partners. Partners are Canna Nutrients. So when we speak about the nutrients, we'll be mentioning Canna quite a bit, but we'll also be talking about a lot of other nutrients. But Canna, one of our partners, and if you're new to growing, Canna is probably all that we recommend. It is the best beginner nutrient because it pretty much does everything for you. AutoPot watering systems, again, if you're a beginner, read up how to use them. They'll do you well. If you're a commercial grower, they're fantastic. They use no electricity. They very rarely got blocked up when they were on the small diameter inlets, but now they've improved the inlets. They've got bigger. I'm not sure if they released the version 3, but very, very rarely get blocked up now. AutoPot watering system, phenomenal system. SANlight LED absolutely got us out the shit in the summer. It was our biggest selling just in the shop, regardless of the meeting partners. It was our biggest selling LED in the shop over the summer. Brilliant LEDs, the Q4W, the Q6W, and I believe, I'm not going to say what they're releasing because I don't know if they've released it yet, but I think they released it in Prague. So they've got a new light coming out, newer, better efficiency, better lenses, just constantly innovating with SANlight LEDs. Then we have can filters, the Ice Max, the Q Max, the Max Fan Pro, the Can Light filters, the Can Original filters. Brilliant company for all your extraction, intakes, outtakes, filters that'll last you 2 years, cheaper filters that'll do you a year, but better, easier on the pocket. Ice Maxes that are quiet, EC fans that are just brilliant for when you want to dim them, control them. Phenomenal company. And last, but by no means least, Revolution Microelectronics. Greg, who's the engineer supreme, making double-ended 1,000-watt HPS lights. He's making dimmable ceramic metal halide lights, and he's also doing the Avicii LEDs, 1,000-watt. Good set of lights. Brilliant engineer. Give them a follow if you haven't already. So that's it. That's the intro for the people who are on podcast. Listen to podcast. Go and get yourself a cup of tea because you've heard this intro plenty of times.
All good? Ready to go? Turn my voice up a little bit. Oh, God, for everyone watching, the whole family.
Are you ready to go? Are you going to be in the house that I built, in the booth that I built?
I know people tune in every Sunday to listen, but even when business is good, we still manage to do the podcast. NPK.
So Barry is getting a lot of well wishes. There's more people worried about Barry's back than Brian, who's fractured his back, is shattered his pelvis. What's going on? So Ronan has Mills and Buddistry, but going with the GH Flora series. All 3 of them, phenomenal feeds. You're not going to go wrong. Dr. Green Tips LED all the way. I'm using them. Now, LEDs is for a completely different podcast, but how's everyone dealing with the heat? Like the lack of heat? It's winter, it's getting cold. What are you doing to make sure that your room or your tent is warm enough? Because it gives off different type of heat, and it's not the same as HPS. It doesn't give that radiated heat to help the plants transpire. Top quick LED tip. Your LEDs are above your plants, obviously. Get a fan and point it at the LEDs, but push that air down. So you're pushing the warm air down towards the plants. It'll help them transpire like you are used to with HPS. So a little bit of a top tip there. Dr. Green tips, if you've got any tips on how you keep them warm, because you can't just throw in multiple 2,000 watt oil-filled radiators. It goes against efficiency of the electricity you're using. So any other top tips, please throw them in. Garden Alchemy, the best grow shop in Nottingham, but I am biased because they are my friends. So go and see them if you're in Nottingham. Big up back for Bazza. How about a bit of sympathy for Brian? He's getting out of hospital today. Actually, we've got to go and pick him up later. Garden Alchemy says tents go tube heater, low watts. So that works really well for the cold temperatures, but where you get your tube heaters from, because the ones that we get, they're like 90 watts and they just don't cut it. With HPS, put them in there overnight, it works, but bar fans, it's oil-filled radiators for me. And I'm not even a big fan of the, what do you call them? The heater fans. So I think they're a bit of a fire hazard. You know, those fans that have got a heated up filament and they push hot air out. I would not use them in a tent or a room unless I'm there. So they just look a bit dangerous for me. I don't personally recommend the blow heaters. Also, if you've got a blow heater and it's blown directly on a plant, then it's gonna your VPD is going to be off the scale. I don't know what's going to go on in your plant. It's going to transpire loads. It's going to cause you nightmares. So oil-filled radiators for me all the way, if you are having to put heat in. In a 1.5, keep the ballast in the tent. That's a good tip. Yeah, keep the ballast in the tent if they're separate from your light fixture. Right, over on YouTube, Raccoon, nice to have you with us. And central heating. Yeah, turn your central heating on. You do what it was meant for. So if you've got questions about nutrients this week, fire them in. If you disagree with anything I say, please disagree. If you agree, great. Give me a big thumbs up. Let's get started. This week, it is the second part of nutrients in the mix. And we're going to start. I've done these in a bit of these aren't in any sort of order. I just threw out what I was thinking of at the time. So we're going to start with root stimulators. So root stims, very easy. They stimulate root growth. But one of my biggest bugbears is that there's been a saying, and it's a true saying, in that bigger roots equals bigger fruits. And what nutrient companies want you to do, and what people who want you to get on want you to do, is they want you to look after your root system, look after your rhizosphere, because when the roots are healthy, the plant's healthy. The water uptake and every single bit of nutrient, unless you foliar feed, are going to be uptaken by the roots. And what I think people what they forget a lot of the time is that you have the main root and it's thick, but nutrients are uptaken by the fine micro hairs. So when you're potting up, I think people have lost the art of maybe potting up as well. When you're potting up and you're a bit rough, you're absolutely damaging all of the micro hairs. And that is, you need as many micro hairs as possible. You need to keep them in the best condition possible. And root stimulators will help develop them. But not always bigger roots mean bigger fruits. I am a big fan of DWC. If anyone's got any DWC questions, you can message me at 11 o'clock at night and I just can't help myself. I'll reply to you because I love that method of growing. Reason being, the roots are directly in the water. They're directly in oxygenated water. You can check pH, check EC. You can directly see how much water they're drinking. And as they drink water, you can measure pH, measure EC, and you know exactly what's going on in the plant and how nutrients are being uptaken. So when I've been doing DWC, we used to do 90-litre DWC tanks. So it would hold, once the bucket was in, it would hold around, let's say 20 litres of water, maybe 30 litres of water. And that was all going well. So bigger roots means bigger fruits. So we upgraded the tank to 120 litres, put the pot in, and now it would hold 40 to 50 litres of water, and the roots had much bigger space to grow into. So we would also veg for a little bit longer. So what happened was that the roots, as soon as they hit the oxygenated water, the nutrient-rich water, with a temperature of 18 degrees Celsius, they would thrive. They would hit the bottom and they would just absolutely explode. And the top of the plant would explode as well. You see faster root growth. You see better growth of the plant above ground as well. As we got on to the later stages of veg, early flower, and definitely the middle flower, what you ended up with was a brick of roots. And I mean, maybe 4 inches of just pure root. It was just incredible. We loved it the first time we saw it. I was like, that's brilliant. And as we grew it again and again, we had a specific strain of tomato, and we wanted to sort of play with the strain, increase the sweetness. We look at bricks content. So we've grown it in DWC. And as we tried again and again, we just never got that sweetness. And sometimes the yield wasn't even as good as when we were in smaller tanks. And as I've been doing a bit of research, bigger roots don't mean bigger fruits. What bigger roots mean is that the plant has to sustain those roots. So plant energy comes from sunlight or the lights from your indoor room. Each day, whether it's 18 hours of light or 12 hours of light, a plant can only uptake a certain amount of photons. So it can only allow itself to generate a certain amount of energy, and it has to distribute that energy into certain areas, whether that's vegetative growth, whether that's flowering sites, whether that's fruiting or roots. It has to decide where it's going to spend its energy that it gets from light. If you've got a massive root system, then in the later flowering stages, it has to spend a proportion of that energy maintaining that root system. And I think it's only a theory. It's only I'll say a hypothesis actually, because I haven't done a proper test side by side. But I think that those bigger roots in the later stages of a plant's life and flowering have to be supported by the plant. And I think expending that extra energy, just maintaining this brick of roots that aren't really doing anything, what it's actually doing is displacing a lot of the water. So then you can only add 20 litres. The water gets taken up a lot quicker. It wasn't as I imagined, with bigger roots being bigger fruits. So we use, what we say in the shop is buy a root stimulator. This is not to say root stimulators are bad. Root stimulators are phenomenal. Like, you absolutely see big differences when you use a good root stem. But some of these root stems will say use us all the way through. So what you've got to be careful of, are you generating so many roots that your plant now has to support those roots in late flowering? When you're in pots, so DWC is a very niche example, but if you're in pots and you get root bound, then in a way the root bound plant is lacking oxygen because it's lacking those fine micro hairs, but it's also having to support those roots as well. So it's not just the fact that it's lacking oxygen and it's strangling itself, as we say. The plant is having to spend a big proportion of its energy supporting those roots. And when you've got those massive roots, you lack the fine root hairs. So this is where we've got to sort of make a conscious decision. When do we stop using our root stem? Now, depending on what root stem you use, depends on when you stop using it. Regeneroot, we're going to go for a cheap, highly concentrated, 1 ml per litre, £20 for a 1 litre bottle. Very good root stem. I'm a big fan of it. It's one of our biggest sellers in the shop. They say use all the way through. My recommendation is it is a pure root stem. And by pure root stem, I mean it is what is in the bottle is designed to stimulate root growth. If you finish that bottle of Regeneroot in week 4 or week 5, I would say don't rush back to the shop to get yourself another bottle. You're in week 5. You've got 3 or 4 weeks left on a 8-week flowering cycle. I wouldn't be going back to spend £20 on generating more roots in that stage of growth. You've also got something like House and Garden Root Accelerator. Was really well used back in the day. Changed hands, went through a bit of a transition. But Root Accelerator, they've got the silver bottles and they've got the gold bottles. We've used it since, and still very good quality root stem. But the difference being is that that's not just a root stem. It has got a huge amount in that bottle, which is why you pay around the £100 mark for a litre bottle. It could be mistaken, but I think it's around the 0.5 ml per litre on the dosage rates. So it will do 2,000 litres on a litre bottle, but it's more than a root stem. I believe it's got enzymes in it. It's a very thick liquid, so it's got a lot in it. If you use that all the way through, then it can help break down dead roots. Things like canazyme will break down dead roots, and that's a good thing to use in late stages to help maintain your root system, make sure that they're healthy, making sure that they're still taking up plenty of nutrients. And then you've got middle of the road Canna Rhizotonic. Again, I'd say more than just a root stem. It's got a lot in there. It's your £30 bottle for a litre, but you use 3 to 4 ml per litre. Other root stems on the market. Anyone who listens to the podcast knows that I wasn't a huge fan of Botanica because we were one of the first shops for those that don't know the story, we were one of the first shops in the country to stock Botanica. We used it straight away, really impressed with it. And the European people who were distributing it into the UK just weren't very good at the job, and the supply stopped and it got taken away from the UK market. Now it's been taken over by Hawthorne. About a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, we made a little bit of a stand for our own personal reasons. Not so much to do with Hawthorne either, more to do with the fact we didn't want to support Botanica because they've been taken off us once already, and I'd got a lot of customers using their products, and if it got taken off us again, I'm just going to look like a dick again. So the first time it got taken off us, I literally had customers coming in saying, oh, where can I get Rhizoblast? Where can I get Sweet Raw? Where can I get Liquid Karma? Oh, you can't get it anymore from the UK. I'm sorry, but try this. And they turn around to you and go, you got me onto it. Like, why are you getting me onto stuff that's no longer available? Makes you, me, the lads in the shop, look like dicks. So that's what one of our reasons for not supporting the second coming of Botanica. Having said that, Rhizoblast is still a phenomenal product. In my opinion, it is one of the best root stimulators on the market. And I will say that my first goal is to look after my customers. So even though I have got that issue with Botanica, not really to do with Hawthorne, more to do with I didn't want to support the Botanica brand anymore because I didn't want it taken away from me for a second time or taken away from the UK for a second time. I've now got it on the shelf, along with HydroGuard, which is a Bacillus thuringiensis, which outcompetes Pythium and is absolutely phenomenal. If you do DWC, if you suffer with Pythium, HydroGuard is, in my opinion, the best product on the market to obliterate Pythium and make sure that you never, ever get Pythium. 2 products that we now stock in the shop because customers come first, and I don't want to, through our reasons for not stocking certain products, not allow my customers to get what I believe are some brilliant, brilliant products, which is Rhizoblast and HydroGuard. Go on the forums, never ever say this, but go on the forums, type in HydroGuard, find me somebody who's got a bad word to say about HydroGuard, because I've looked and I haven't been able to find. And seeing as Shogun Ben has just joined, I haven't used it. We don't stock it in the shop, but I have heard very good things about Katana Roots. So that is another good root stimulator on the grapevine. A lot of shops stock it, a lot of shops use it. I have heard good things about it. What other root stems have we got? So you've got Dutch Pro's Take Root, brilliant root stem. That's around your £30, 1 ml per litre. So find the best root stem for you. What works for you? Do you want I'll see your standard root stem. Regenerate is definitely not standard. It's £20, 1 ml per litre. Absolutely does the job. Or do you want to go for the root accelerators, the Rhizoblasts, the 0.5 ml per litre bottles that have a humongous amount of elements in there and do a big job? Or do you want to go middle of the road? Do you want to go Canna Rhizotonic, £30, slightly less concentrated? You need to use a little bit more, but it's a good middle of the road root stimulator, and it combines quality with a good mixture of ingredients. So it's up to you. But the take-home message for root stems is bigger roots don't always mean bigger fruits. bigger roots can actually lead the plant to spend more energy, and you don't want that in flowering. You want all the energy, as much as possible, going towards fruit production. Joe Nutriculture, how are we? Joe Nutriculture, actually, 2 weeks ago, tried to join the podcast live. So I'll give you a nice shout out there. And I've seen her since, and she panicked. She didn't mean to do it. But imagine I'd actually accepted your live request and got you on podcast. House and Garden, Root Accelerator. That's the one I'm talking about, Joe. It's a good root stem. We've got it on our shelves, the silver bottle and the gold bottle. Actually, I think there's a little bit of confusion about what the silver bottle and the gold bottle are. And Joe's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe silver bottle is for hydroponics and gold bottle is for soil, cocoa, and mixed media. So make sure that's the reason that there's a silver bottle and a gold bottle, if anyone was wondering. Shora said root bastic. Actually, you know what? Good shout. Very good shout, because I've got a friend who's used Root, he's used Take Root, he's used Hydrotops root stimulator, another phenomenal root stimulator by Hydrotops. And he's actually using Root Bastic and very, very happy with it. So Root Bastic is now been tested in-house and is getting very happy with his results. Indica Head Shop said Hydrotops root stim. Yeah, good shout out. And Elite 91. Now we're getting some samples into the shop of Elite 91. We really are one of the worst shops for nutrient companies because it takes us ages to get a product on the shelf. One, because we have to test it. Two, I want to see what other people around the country are thinking about it and seeing about it. And I just don't like to, as soon as a nutrient comes out, I don't like to throw it on the shelf because I feel like you do a disservice to the person that you're trying to sell it to or that is buying it if you haven't used it. Elite 91 is getting some really good feedback. I'm hearing a lot of people using it, a lot of people getting great results from it, and he is sending us some samples. So if you are one of our customers, come in the shop. I'll have samples hopefully by the end of the week or early next week. So we'll be able to give, if you want to test it out, give you some samples of that. Right. If I'm noticing that the quality on YouTube is not brilliant, and I think Josh has said sorry for the sound quality. If you are watching on YouTube, we are live on Instagram at NPK Podcast. So if you are struggling, head over to that one, and that one's streaming quite well at the moment. Next up is growth enhancers. So you are using your A and B, you are using a root stem, and a few people tend to have issues in growth in the vegetative stage, whether it's a lack of calcium magnesium because you're using a poor cocoa, or you're not quite getting the dosage rate right on your A and B, or you don't measure your pH and it's really low, really high. It's not uptaking nutrients. The last thing you want to do is start adding other bottles. So check your pH, make sure that it's an acceptable range so that you can actually uptake the A and B that you're giving to it. Make sure that you're using a good quality cocoa. So Canna Natural is it's one of the cheapest cocoa you can buy, and it's because it's not been fully buffered. So people who buy cheap cocoa maybe don't manage the pH so well and aren't really on the ball with looking for what's going wrong with your plant. They can maybe get calcium deficiencies, nitrogen deficiencies. So you might want to use some growth enhancers. My favorite is CX. Again, CX Regeneroot is the CX Mighty Growth Enhancer. It is a nitrogen. It is a blend of ammonical nitrogen and nitrate nitrogen. Difference between the two of those, I think we touched on it last week, but I just want to reiterate it. And I've got my sheet here. So ammonical nitrogen is NH4+, so it's an anion. No, it's a cation because it's positive. And nitrate is NO3-, it's a anion. Plants love ammonium nitrate. If you give it too much ammonium nitrate, they can overdose because they absolutely love it. Nitrate nitrogen is probably the better nitrogen to use because it's the plant takes it up it doesn't take it up too quickly, doesn't take it up too slowly. It's a very good nitrogen to use in your base nutrients, and Mighty Growth Enhancer uses an ammonical nitrogen, so it's instantly uptaken. Very good stuff for resolving deficiencies, but mostly the nitrate nitrogen for the longer lasting nitrogen. Combines it with calcium as well, because if you listened last week, we did Mulder's chart, antagonism, stimulation. You can all see that. Go and download that chart. It's very good. And you will see that calcium is basically, it's a shit to everybody. It doesn't like playing. It tries to block everybody. And so Mighty Growth Enhancer will add calcium, because without going too much into the science, because it's not really a science podcast this week, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in your cocoa with the cation exchange capacity, how elements or ions are held within the cocoa, what is knocked off to allow other nutrients to be uptaken. It can get quite complicated, but Mighty Growth Enhancer is very, very good product. Solves the nitrogen and the calcium problem. Is it needed? Question mark. For people who use a good quality cocoa, measure the pH, use a good quality A and B, and dose correctly for the stage of growth, it shouldn't be needed. It's a very good product to have in the medicine cabinet. If you've overwatered or you've missed your pH or you've slightly underdone it on the A and B, it's a very good product to get you out the shit. I called it a medicine cupboard product. Now, this is a good time to mention dosage rates. Dosage rates can get on my nerves a little bit, because dosage rates are a guide. Good growers will not follow the chart to the, I can't think of the word, to the letter. Good growers not follow the grow chart to the letter, because they understand the plant. They've been using it for a while, and they know when to underdose and when to overdose. If you've never used Mighty Growth Enhancer before, or you're using it now and you don't measure EC, it recommends to use it at 1 ml per litre. Now, if you use it at 1 ml per litre, it throws your EC through the roof. Using a 0.5 ml per litre, that's all you need, and it'll still have a big effect on your EC. So when you're adding new products, it's really good to make sure you're measuring the EC to see, is it too strong, is it too weak, and you can make sure you're getting it right on track. Other growth enhancers, there's plenty out there. There's the Growth Technologies. Formulex is brilliant. That's got vitamins, minerals, amino acids. There's a lot of good growth enhancers out there. Decide if you need them. Keep them for a medicine cabinet. I keep on saying medicine cabinet. It's medicine cupboard or cabinet, whatever one you want to use. Growth enhancers, if you're doing everything really well, probably not needed, but it is always nice to give your plants a little bit of a kick. So it's personal preference for that. Let's have a quick look at the comments. There's Indica said there's a channel called SANlight on YouTube and Instagram. Check their grow methods. They totally strip all leaves day 1 of flower, and I think day 10. They claim they use more micronutrients. They've written a book, I think, SANlight, or yeah, I think they've written a book, and they were charged £100 for it. I haven't bought it yet. But it's not a method I've tried. I see some people doing this method, stripping the plants down so it's got hardly any leaves. It's just in America, it's mostly an American technique, and on the legal states they use it on cannabis. So in the UK, if you're trying to grow bigger tomatoes or bigger fruits, you might want to try this method. What they do is they strip all the fan leaves off, so you're basically left with a stem. And in America, you're left with bud site, and just the leaves around the buds. Now, I can see why people would do it in the last 10 days, because you get rid of all the leaves and you're focusing all the energy into these bud sites. But I don't know why they would do it on day 1 of flower, because these leaves, these fan leaves, they're solar panels. It's where they collect their energy. So another thing that I always like to say to our customers is, if you've got your light and you're stripping all the leaf back, any light that's hitting the floor, you just imagine throwing pennies or 5 pence or 10 pence at the floor every few seconds. Just throw the money away at the floor, because that's what you're doing. If light hits the floor, you are throwing money away. If you want to become more efficient and you want to get better results, this is why scrogging works so well, because you scrog the plant out, you get as much canopy area to absorb as much light, and you're going to get the better results. The more light that hits the floor, the lower the yield's going to be. And that's a brilliant, it's a brilliant way of looking at your room and saying, how efficient am I being? I'm using these 1,000-watt double-ended lights. They're super efficient. I'm using the best nutrients. I've got the best genetics. I'm the best grower. And all that lights hitting the floor, you're not going to get the best results. So it's a good top tip for making sure you're being efficient with your lighting. Indica said on top of that, so the last comment was they claim they use more micronutrients. Why would micronutrients affect the growth better? Seems a big claim. It's hard. Micronutrients, we said at the beginning of last week, just because NPK are the nutrients that are uptaken in the highest amounts, it doesn't mean that they're the most important, because you can have sufficient levels of NPK, you can have sufficient levels of calcium and magnesium and sulfur, and if you are lacking in molybdenum or copper or manganese, then you're going to get a bit of a shit plant. So every nutrient is essential in the amounts that you need to give it to, and micronutrients just mean they need it in smaller amounts. But having said that, at the beginning of last week's podcast, we also said that the dry mass of a plant in order is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, then nitrogen. I think it's potassium and then phosphorus and then calcium. So the macronutrients are in the plant in the biggest quantities. Why would micronutrients affect the growth better? I actually don't understand why chopping the leaves off, using more micronutrients, why would it grow better? You're removing the solar panels, but obviously it works for them. They wouldn't have written a book and they wouldn't be doing a successful YouTube channel if it wasn't working. But for me, for our podcast listeners, I would say do your trimming. We've done podcasts on vegetative growth and how to manipulate your plants, but leaves are solar panels. It's where the plants make all their energy. So there we go. Now, silica. There's a lot of different words for this element, and a lot of people say the wrong thing. So we have potassium silicates, monosilicic acids, and we have nanosilica. They're the three broad categories of silica. Costs: how do you manage pH? Why do you use it? What does it do? So you should use silica at the very beginning, especially your potassium silicates. So potassium silicate is my words are just absolutely abandoning me today. Don't know what's going on. I think it's because I've just bagged over 160-40, but my vocabulary is seriously lacking. Josh, help me out. The potassium silicate is highly alkaline. So when you add it to your water butt, then it shoots your pH up. If you don't manage your pH, you're going to get absolutely shocking results. It's going to go cloudy. It's going to leave you in a world of pain. So with potassium silicate, you add it to the water first. It raises your pH. You stir it in well to the water so it's fully mixed. Then you reduce the pH by using, if you're in veg, it's great to use nitric acid, which becomes nitrogen. If you're in flour, it's good to use phosphoric acid, becomes phosphorus, and get that pH back down to 7. So now you're left with water, your silica, and your pH down to 7, and then you add your A, your B, your root stimulator, and that's how you crack on with potassium silicates. Monosilicic acids, it is still advised, in my opinion, to put the silicas in first. So add the monosilicic acid, but you don't need to adjust pH because it's fine. There's some products that will still shoot your pH up. We are doing a bit of research at the moment into silicas, and thank you very much. Yeah, a bit of sugar. Nice bit of orange there. Thank you very much. We're actually doing quite a bit of research onto silica, and we're going to have a guest on in the next few weeks talking about a brand new silica, a silica changing product. I'm going to leave it on that cliffhanger because this silica will probably change the market for the better. It's really good, and it's going to put all the other monosilicic acids, it's going to put the shits up them because it's a great product. I can't wait to introduce it to you all. But monosilicic acid, it is the form of silica that the plant wants. When you use potassium silicates, then when the plant uptakes it, it is uptaken as monosilicic acid, and it is laid down in the plant as silica dioxide. It's laid down as silica dioxide. That's what creates its strength. And then you have nanosilica. So nanosilica is, for people that have followed us for many years, you will know that we came out with a nanosilica. Now, nano means very, very small particles, nanometers. So with the nano, it's suspended in solution rather than dissolved, so it doesn't affect pH. And because of the size of the particles, the plant is able to uptake it with hardly any energy expended, and it's a very good way of getting silica into your plant. However, the technology for creating nanoparticles is still very expensive. There's some people who say there's some research that increases the scaremongering about nanoparticles. Now, certain nanoparticles are dangerous. Some nanoparticles are not dangerous. It's another podcast if people are interested, but I do think nanoparticles have become a much more talked about subject. When we released our product about 3 years ago, I think we were a little bit too early. It's very expensive. So my honest opinion, even though I have a nanosilica product, I still think that monosilicics at the moment are the better product because it's going to cost you less and still do a brilliant job. So it's monosilicics for the win for me. Costs. What you need to do is you need to look at the cost of the bottle, the dosage rates, and how much silica it's actually given to you. Now, you'll see on the bottom of bottles things like Aptus, things like there's another one, Gen 200. They have 2.4% monosilicic acid, and that is 1.2% actual silicon. And we have a new product that is launched, and that is called Grow Genius. And that is, I'm going to give you a little bit of a treat there. Grow Genius, that is one of the new silica products coming onto the market. It is on the market already. It's available from Highlight Horticulture. And that's all I'm going to tell you for now. If you're interested, I'm excited, then give it a couple of weeks. We'll have a guest on and we will go really in depth on silicas. So I'm going to leave silicas alone for now, apart from this comment here from Raccoon. What about CalMag before or after silica? Ooh, you know what's hard about that one? If you RO, what do you do? If you use potassium silicate, you would add the potassium first. It's going to send your pH just skyrocket through because there's no calcium or magnesium to buffer. Bring your pH back down with some nitric acid if you're in veg, phosphoric acid if you're in bloom, then add the CalMag. If you are RO and you're on monosilicic acid, I would not be too bothered about what order you put them in. I'll put the CalMag in, mix it up, make sure that it's well buffered, which is what CalMag's doing to your water, and then you can add the monosilicic acid. But that is just off the top of my head. I don't believe it would have any adverse reactions, but just double check on that before you start doing 1,000 litres of water and fuck it up and start sending me messages blaming me. I don't believe it'd have any adverse reaction if you use a monosilicic after CalMag, but I would double check first, and I will get that question 100% answered when we do a silica podcast in a few weeks. So we're going to leave silica alone there, unless anyone's got any questions. Next up is vitamins. Vitamins and minerals. What do? Vitamins allow the plant to operate at its best. Vitamins like vitamin C in humans allow us to recreate our skin cells quicker, create elasticity. So if you're eating your oranges, your vitamin C is high. It prevents scurvy. That's why people got scurvy, because of a lack of vitamin C. In plants, they're not nutrients, but they allow certain processes within the plant to happen at a faster rate or happen at a more efficient rate. So vitamins are very important. They are included in base nutrients, but Super Thrive, I feel, is making a bit of a comeback. And I'm talking on behalf of Liverpool, people in Manchester, Scotland, London, Birmingham, Wales. They're thinking, making a comeback. We've been selling for years. It's always been flying out. But Super Thrive seems to be making a comeback because, for me especially, I do like to add vitamins. And what was the vitamin I used to use? Again, going back to Botanicare, I used to use the Botanicare vitamin range. and it was Vitamino, I think it was called. It was really good. But Super Thrive is also a phenomenal product. Great after a bad environment issue, over or underwatering, high or low temps, or stressful periods. So if you don't use vitamins like your Super Thrives all the way through, it's a good medicine cupboard or cabinet product, and it's good to have in this. If your plant does have issues, if it is stressed out, vitamins can help get the plant back on its feet quicker than if you didn't use vitamins. So it's good products. They're mostly used in your base nutrients and in other products, but if you want to get proper concentrated vitamins into your plant, products like Super Thrive work really well. I think Formulex might have a nice blend of vitamins in there as well, but it's a medicine cabinet product and brilliant to use if you've had some issues with your environment or with you as a grower creating stresses for your plant. On the same strain of vitamins, but moving on slightly, is humics and fulvic acids. If you haven't used them before, there's plenty of products out there. A lot of root stems contain humics and fulvics, so that's where your Rhizoblast, it's where your House and Garden Root Accelerator come into their own. They believe they contain some humics and some fulvics. You'll know if your product contains humics and fulvics because it will be brown, treacly, gloopy, depending on how much humic and fulvic it's got. What they do is they increase the CEC capacity, the cation exchange capacity of your soil and your cocoa. So if you've got a cocoa and you add humics and fulvics, it allows your cocoa to retain more of the nutrients that you're given. So when that plant does want it, they're available. They can help with stress as well, but I'm not 100% on the reasons why they help with stress. It might just be that because nutrients are available, they can take what they want, they can take extra what they want, or if they don't need a certain element, it can be bound up into the humic and fulvic acid cation exchange sites that it provides, and the plant can dictate a little bit better about what it wants. So another good product, if you're not using it, do your research, maybe get it into your feed and get it into the mix. Now, there's a question actually back on silica just before we move on. Why is granular silica so underused in UK? Mills Vitabricks, for example. Mills, you know what? I don't even know about that product. Mills Vitabricks. I know Mills Vitalize, but just I don't know about granular Vitabricks. I think I'm being silly there, or it might be a typo maybe. But Mills Vitalize is liquid silica, so I don't know about granular silica. Granular silica from Raw Industries or NPK Industries, I think they do a powdered silica. I'm not sure. I've never used it. It's a potassium silicate, and monosilicic acids are just much better. So I don't tend to deal with potassium silicates anymore because it's basically old technology. So I should really go back and do a little bit of research just to help those people who do still use it, but it is an old technology. It's not the best form of silica for the plants. And the only reason we still sell potassium silicate, and we sell Bloom's potassium silicate, which off the top of my head is 33% potassium silicate, because it costs £30 for a litre. It treats thousands of litres of water. So anybody who wants to use it and doesn't want to spend that much money but still have the benefits of silica, that's who we sell that to. Right. Queen Salk, she's well up to date on all the Mills stuff going on, says Vitabricks was discontinued. So that's why I don't know about it. But I need to learn about it. So thank you very much for bringing it to my attention. And then Raccoon says, I tend to go silica then CalMag, but never sure as there is some CalMag in water anyway. Yeah, there is. But silica, if you go silica first, you're not going to run into any problems. So keep doing that and you'll be fine. Pre-flower nutrients, post-flower nutrients. What is anybody using them? What are you using? Why are you using them? The biggest one that comes to mind is the pre and the post-flower nutrient, flower-based by Buddha's Tree. We use it the last week of veg, the first 2 weeks of flower. It has a good amount of, it's got a ratio of phosphorus and potassium, but also has boron in there. Now, boron, let me just see what this table's saying about boron. Helps pollen grain germination, tube growth, seed and cell wall formation, maturity promotion, and sugar translocation. Now, I'm not 100% on what effect it has when a plant goes from 18 hours of light to 12 hours of light, but boron's really important for that transition. So flower-based has boron in there for that reason. You've got other products by the Bloom yellow bottles called Ultra. These work really well for the first 2 weeks of flowering as well. They initiate more flowering sites, more flowers, and you've got a better baseline to build on. They also, it's not even winter, and my nose has gone dead itchy, and I'm pulling all the stupidest faces for everyone watching. So you think your products like flower-based, your products like Ultra, they can help plants manage stretching and get them ready for fruit bearing. Now, when a product prevents stretching, you know how we feel about PGRs, and these products work really well. We haven't had them tested yet. I'd be very, very, very surprised if Budgetry flower-based was a PGR or had anything in it. But it works really well to prevent stretching. And those first 2 weeks of 12 hours of light, that is where the plant stretches a lot. So it's a good product to use if you've got height issues, if you don't want spindly plants. It's very good for getting it in there. Products that are promoted as stretch inhibitors, probably PGR. There is a lot of products out there that keep the internodal growth short. If you look up diminizide and you look up what does diminizide do, it keeps your internode short, stops your plants from stretching. It was used in apple trees in America because it would stop them from growing so tall, destroying electricity pylons and just wiping out whole communities for electricity. It was then banned in America. The diminizide is called the Alaska. If you're interested, we've done a whole podcast on it, so I'm not going to go into it again now. But it was called the Alaska. Diminizide is now banned. But just be on the lookout. Be wary. Still be aware of what you're buying. We're in phase 2 of the PGR testing. We'll initiate phase 3 in January for those that are interested. And then once phase 3 is done and out the way, that's basically me stopping chasing companies to get involved. And then we will reinitiate it through the podcast, through YouTube, through Instagram to get, I will donate, wholesalers will donate, shops will donate, growers will donate. And when we get the funds together, we will test these companies that haven't donated themselves and we will get it out there. Eventually, we will clean up the industry. But for now, be careful. If a product is so phenomenally good and it prevents stretching and does all kinds of craziness, just be aware of PGRs and are you willing to put those products into your plant? Moving on, boosters. Everybody loves a boost. You're all looking great today, by the way. There's my little boost for everyone on Instagram and everyone on YouTube. Boosters are metabolism enhancers or sugar boosters. There's a lot of confusion about what they do, how they do it. Canna Boost is the most well-known boost on the market. It is a metabolism enhancer. It contains no NPK and helps promote bricks in a plant, which is the sugar content. So it's a very highly guarded secret on what is in Boost, but it allows the plant to uptake more nutrients. That's what we mean by increasing the metabolism. When a plant's metabolism increases, it uptakes more nutrients. So when it uptakes more nutrients, it puts on more weight. And depending on what nutrients you're using, it can increase flavor, quality, and obviously yield. Now, there's a difference between metabolism enhancers and just sugar boosters. A lot of products on the market, or a few products on the market, are basically treacle. And they use, I've never quite got my head around why people would put, I can't even think what it's called now. It's a big sugar. And hopefully somebody on Instagram or YouTube is going to help me out. It's basically like treacle, molasses, blackstrap molasses, that's what it is. And that's what we call long chain sugars. So they add that to the Queen Salkin with the molasses. Thank you very much. Basically, they add those because they think it increases sugar content in the plants. Now, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not an authority at all on this, but when you add sugars, plants do not uptake sugar. So when you feed your plant blackstrap molasses or any of these sugar products, the plant does not uptake sugar. It does not uptake glucose. What you are doing is you are feeding the beneficial bacteria around the rhizosphere, around the root zone. And when those beneficial bacteria have got sugars to feed on, they increase in size and they work better. So those beneficial bacteria will help the plant uptake nutrients. They'll help the roots develop. They do a lot of things that we still don't understand. But plants do not uptake sugar. So you're not feeding sugar to uptake sugar to produce more sugar content. It just doesn't make sense. But it does absolutely feed microbes, and that's why you're adding sugar content. But be aware, it's one of the things I'd love to get into and do more research on and find out what is a sugar booster, what's a metabolism enhancer. If you do side by side, you will know what is a metabolism enhancer, because the plants will grow quicker. They will uptake more nutrients. If you're in DWC, you'll see that your EC is dropping because the plant's eating more food. If it's just a sugar booster, you should notice that the plant looks healthier because there's more microbes in your root zone, and the sugar content will increase in the plant, but not because of the sugar you're putting in. My advice is do not add blackstrap molasses to your plant. It's a long chain sugar, which means that the plant, it has to be broken down anyway. Microbes don't feed on blackstrap molasses. They feed on glucose. They feed on simple sugars. So that blackstrap has to be downgraded, for want of a better word, into the simple sugars that the microbes can feed on. You would literally be better mixing table sugar. Do not do that, but you get me gist of my point. And then somebody's asking the question here, which moves us on to our next point. What you rate Sugar Rush? Sugar Rush was Mills product. Queen Salky can confirm. It was a Mills product. It was discontinued because Mills found out through consistent testing that if you add their C4 and their PK and you add them at slightly different ratios, which if you want more information, get in touch with Mills, that it produced the same effect as adding Sugar Rush. So they discontinued Sugar Rush. And me Instagram just paused there. So they discontinued Sugar Rush because you can get the same result from C4 or from the PK. So that's what that was. But it was a good product, but you can just do the same with the C4 and the PK. Another question from Grown_around was, is Dutch Pro and Canna Boost not the same kind of thing? No. And that is what brings me on to my next point, PK boosters. So Canna does PK 1314. It is a pure phosphorus and potassium. That's all that is in it. Explode has a lot of stuff in it. It has PK. It has hardeners. It has sugar promoting compounds, we'll call them, rather than sugar boosters. And it also helps increase metabolism. Different because I think some people think PK boosters, they like to use Canna Boost, PK, and people that I've known will want to use Explode as well. Or they'll be using Bloom Mastics, another great example of a PK booster. It contains PK, but it also contains a lot of other compounds as well to increase metabolism, increase sugar production in the plant, and just a lot of stuff. So if your product contains PK, be very careful because it contains salts. It will increase this EC. If your product, like Canna Boost, has no salts, it won't affect EC. You could literally dose it 10 ml per litre with Boost. It just costs you a fortune. So be careful about what is a boost, what's a metabolism enhancer, and what is a PK boost, and what is just pure PK. Make sure you do your homework on what you're buying. Dr. Green Tip said Explode is a PK booster one. Absolutely spot on. Raccoon said, could you mention line cleaners like Keep It Clean? I use that with an AutoPot, but also use Mammoth P, and I'm not sure if I'm throwing money away. I also use Neutralize by EcoSarve to try and help. You know what? I could probably talk about line cleaners on flushes, which is literally minutes away from talking about. Before I get onto that, I'm going to talk about finishing products. So just before I move on, PK ratios. There's a lot of recipes and people just think that the more PK that they add, the the more weight they're going to put on. But if you listen to last week's podcast, then you'll know that PKs, along with other elements, are just nutrients on a motorway. You add more PK, it's going to mean that the motorway gets congested, and the nitrogen cars, the calcium and magnesium lorries, they can't get to the plant as easy. So don't just add PK and increase your PK for extra weight. It doesn't work like that. It's like you take 2 paracetamol when you've got a headache. Just taking 10 paracetamol make your headache go away quicker? No, it probably means you're going to get your stomach pumped, because there's dosage rates for a reason. Follow the dosage rates. If a company could get you to use 10 mil per litre of their PK, they would, because they would sell more. They're not trying to keep a secret away from you. Follow the instructions. Look at your plant. Does it want more PK? Become a plant whisperer. We did that podcast years ago. Go back to Plant Whisperer and understand what's going on in the plant. What is the plant telling you through its root system, through its growth, through its deficiencies, or by how healthy it's looking, and decide for yourself. But be very careful with your PKs. Some great PKs, Bloombastic, Dutch Pro Explode, Canna Boost and PK. You use those alongside each other. Well, so you've got Meta Boost and PK 918 by Buddha's Tree. You've got Mill C4 and PK. Each brand has got really good PKs and boosters, but when you get into, I know a lot of people mix and match with the PKs and with the boosters. Try not to mix and match too much. If you're going to use Canna Boost, maybe use Canna PK as well, because if you use Canna Boost and Buddha's Tree PK 918, probably get good results, but you're probably spending a bit more money than you want to. And some things in PK 918 might not agree with Boost. Be very careful is all I'm saying. Instagram is about to go off. I'm going to go live again in 2 seconds. Instagram trying to keep me down to an hour. It's not fucking happening, Instagram. I'm going to go again for about 10 minutes will be. Where are we? 5 o'clock. I'm going to be 10 minutes, maybe even close this down in 5 more minutes. So that's your PKs. Finishing PKs like Overdrive. I've found that Overdrive works really well if the plants are looking shit. So if they're not tightening up and they're not looking as good as they can do, Overdrive works really well. If the plants are looking good, don't bother using Overdrive. Just crack on with how you've been doing and you'll be fine. Now, last 5 minutes, finishing products and flushes. Now, I did an Instagram post. If you don't follow us on Instagram, go at NPK_hydroponics. That's the shop Instagram. That is where you'll see the products, the lights, the tents, all the grow shop information that growers will want. And the podcast is at NPK Live. We did a post on our shop Instagram about terpene enhancers. And to be honest, we've used a product called Terpenez, and we feel it did really well. But I was actually shocked at how many people had a negative view on it. And that's why I love doing this shit, because no matter how many years you've been doing this, no matter that we work in a shop every day, no matter that we do a podcast and I do all this research, this is why I love doing this shit, because you get to find out what everybody thinks. And Terpenez, from what I'm being told, can maybe be a little bit over the top for certain strains, for certain genetics. What I'm going to do is I've used it on very citrusy fruits. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try Terpenez on some tomato plants. I'm going to see what effect that has on the taste. So it brought up a great question. When's a good time to use terpene enhancers? Should you use terpene enhancers? Should you just get the genetic that you want to get, build a brilliant environment, be a brilliant grower, and just let the plant do all the work and enhance it naturally, so to speak? There wasn't too much bad thought for Terpenator. That's because Terpenator doesn't give anything artificial. It stresses the plant out so that it produces oils naturally. And we've talked about this on podcasts before. If you stress a plant out, it will produce oil to stop plant animals from eating it, from insects attacking it. And oils, depending on what your plant is, will increase flavour and will increase aroma as well. So Terpenator, very good product. Winter Frost, I've had some really good feedback from Winter Frost, especially for colouring up your plants at the end. But again, it does it naturally, doesn't do anything to taste or flavour. But if you're interested in those, check out our Instagram post, get involved in the conversation, follow us. This week we're on a big drive for light, and so we're looking at lights, the difference between double-ended and single-ended, and follow us on Instagram because that'll be our podcast will be on light in the next few weeks, probably around end of November, December. Flushes to finish off. Finish with a flush. I've done a whole podcast on flush, so I'm not going to annoy Josh and start getting into do you flush, do you not flush? What I do want to say on flush is you do not spend 12 weeks pumping your plant full of all of the 17 essential elements and all the vitamins to spend a week to flush them all out. It doesn't happen. What you're doing is you're removing the salt content from your media. You're removing it from the xylem and the phloem, which is the waterways and the nutrient pathways that the plant takes. And what you're doing is you're removing the chlorophyll. So people say that everyone knows that listening to the podcast, we used to grow a lot of tobacco. A large amount of tobacco, and we would still flush that tobacco because when you didn't flush to when you did flush, the tobacco would retain its chlorophyll and would be quite harsh tasting. The longer you flush, the more chlorophyll you can get out of the plant, or it can degrade. And then when we were burning the tobacco, it just burns a lot cleaner. And that's my current belief on flushing. Don't overdo it. Water works fine. Don't need to pH either because you're not trying to get nutrients into the plants. You don't need to pH your flush, in my opinion. If flush products do work really well because there's some people that believe you've just been giving your plants a load of food and then to suddenly go, nope, no more food, there's water. It stresses them out. You might want that stress to produce colours or extra oil, or you might want to bring them down naturally, bring them off the feed gradually, make sure they're not going into cold sweats. And that's what some flushes will do. And some other flushes will break down the salts, get them out the system quicker. So if you can't do a 2-week water flush, a 1-week flush with a product will help as well. Let's see some of these comments. So line cleaners, keep it clean. Use that with an AutoPot, but he also uses Mammoth P. I'm not sure if I'm throwing money away. Keep it clean. You would have to find out what was in the product. But in AutoPot, I would just be safe. I would not use Keep It Clean and Mammoth P just to make sure I'm being safe. I don't think Keep It Clean would have an effect on Mammoth P because Mammoth P is like the SAS of microbes. It takes a lot to kill them motherfuckers. But just don't take the risk. Line clean with Keep It Clean. You can definitely use it when there's plants in there. You can definitely use it with your other nutrients. It helps prevent salt buildup in the lines, but just don't dose with Mammoth P when you do it. Next week, start using your Mammoth P again and re-inoculate. I also use Neutralize by EcoThrive. Neutralize, phenomenal product. Removes chlorines, removes chloramines, which they don't evaporate out the water. So Neutralize is phenomenal. If you're using a microbial product, make sure you buy Neutralize with it because if you've got chlorine-heavy water, it's going to kill off a lot of the beneficial bacteria. So it's a very good product, very cheap as well from EcoThrive. 420M Fuck, but I like to call you Funk because it's less aggressive. M20 Funk. Leaf strip works a treat. Lots of growers on the tubes do it with success. Yeah, so that's in response to an earlier comment about 3-Light stripping the plants. I've seen some brilliant growers get great results. I just don't like to remove the solar panels, but that's just my personal opinion. Always do what works for you. Give it a go. That's how we become better growers, is by trying all these different things. Indica said volcanic rock dust would improve bricks content. I'm not sure how, but I'm interested to learn what you've done and how you felt it increased the bricks content. I know it's great in using in your media because it can help with drainage, but interested to know about the volcanic rock dust. And Indica said an ice cold flush really brings out the colours. It definitely does. So in the last time you give it your plant a flush, give it an ice cold flush. Definitely does work to bring out the colours in the plant. And Connor said it's a fade, not a flush. It's a good way of thinking about it. You're not flushing anything out. You're just gently fading off the nutrients to get your plants to the best possible result. I know I said 20 minutes, Josh, but I sometimes just can't help myself. But that's the end of the podcast. Woohoo! Right. Thank you very much for every week you join us on a Wednesday at 4:00. I genuinely appreciate it because it's just this. I'm getting a phone call. Go away. It's just this stupid scouser talking about growing. And I do genuinely appreciate everybody tuning in, taking the time to listen. Everybody that listens on podcast that doesn't have the time to watch live on Instagram or YouTube, thank you very much. It genuinely appreciated. And because of everyone watching live and everyone that downloads the podcast, I am able to get some of the best guests that we've ever had on the show. So you can look forward to, should I say the names? Because it's not 100% guaranteed. They've just said that they will come on the podcast. There's potential, I'll say potential, for Frenchy Cannoli to be on the podcast. Someone I've followed for a long time. Somebody that if you know who he is, you will be getting very excited. I would love to get him on the podcast so we can go live and we can see it with him. But more than likely we'll call in and we will have a very long podcast with Frenchy Cannoli. Another podcast, I was over the moon when Jeff Lowenfels followed us on Instagram. I've read all of Jeff's books. If you haven't, his books are Teaming with Nutrients, Teaming with Microbes, Teaming with Fungi or Fungi. Brilliant books for the beginner and even people who love science like me. Absolutely phenomenal books. Hopefully he will be getting on the podcast soon as well. And we have some other podcasts lined up, but I'm going to keep them a bit of a secret. There's going to be some really good guests on the run up to Christmas. I'm going to get some of the industry people. For those that have been following and listening for a long time, you'll know that we do special podcasts every 50 episodes. Episode 200 is coming up. I am going to invite Slim down. I'm going to invite 180. If you know who he is, you'll be excited that he'll be coming back on the podcast. If he, I haven't asked him yet, but I hope he comes back on the podcast. Gavin from Premier Hydroponics and a good few other people just want to come on, have a chat, and talk to you all and get experience and opinions from around the country. So some really good podcasts coming up. Thank you very much for watching on Instagram. Thank you very much for watching on YouTube. It's genuinely appreciated. I love you all. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next week for a podcast, which I haven't got any papers for. So let's say, I'll decide next week. It's next week's podcast. See you all later. Take care. Bye-bye.